Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. We are in the one of the winter port yards right now, and again we are putting supers on colonies that need them and rearranging colonies that don't. So for instance, maybe reversing brood chambers. So I might ask you, Deanna, to hold the camera for me to be able to see what's going on there. You want to keep close because my voice won't carry too much. But first of all, what I wanted to point out was, have a look here. We have a nice pollen flow going on now. All these bees beautifully covered in pollen, and things are really going on now. We've got lots of bees coming in with fresh pollen, so we have a nice pollen flow, which means they're rearing brood in earnest here. We've just added a second deep onto this colony. This was a single. We've added a second deep. This colony is overwintered as a double deep, and so it's already got two deeps, and they're using the bottom entrance here, which infers to me that the cluster is right down into that lower brood chamber. We'll have a look here. If you want to come up and look from the top now. We've still got a lot of bees, both upstairs and they're using downstairs. If you maybe come over here, Diana. Good. Now, the reason they're using the downstairs is look how full of honey the upstairs is here. This is still really full of honey. And so they're forced down into the lower brood chamber. Now, we're going to be taking these rims off. And because this is now in the way, I'll take the insulation sleeve off, which normally I'll leave on as long as I can. Now, I was wrong. This is not a double deep. It's a deep and a medium. And so I'm going to rearrange these supers here. So I'm going to put this medium down at the bottom and put the bottom one up at the top. This way I can get the bees expanding into these deep combs, which is what I need for making brood frames. This medium is still 2/3 full of honey, and they're starting to get into this area to make brood, but this hive had lots of honey in it still. And in fact, look here, this super here is still half full of honey as well. So we've got a nice sized cluster, but they use the food very conservatively, which is really good. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift this up, and then I'm going to put the small brood chamber down here after I first clean off mold and dead bees and that sort of thing. A little bit of mold, the bees will clean this right out, especially now that it's all much area. But this super, which is very full of honey, there's certainly no shortage of food in this colony. What it's short of is room to rear brood in. But by putting this at the top, this area is going to be warmer. We can see empty comb here, empty comb here, empty comb here. They're going to have a lot more room to expand into. So I'll take the mouse guards off. And screw out. And this colony, they've got room to expand into, so I'm not going to be adding any more room onto it yet, but maybe in another week it'll be ready for another super. So we'll see how it goes. As soon as they've expanded a bit more, we're going to put another super on here. So we reversed the brood chamber, so now the heat from the cluster, the bees down here, are going to really get the rest of this space going much more quickly. I'm not going to bother putting the insulation back on the hive. We're into a warm spell now. I'm never in a hurry to take the insulation off, but once I've taken it off, there's no point in me putting it back on. It's just increasing the workload. Let's see if we can do the same with this colony. Now this colony already looks like it has a larger population of bees in it. Just to me it just seems larger. It's a double deep this time. So, a little bit of smoke in. You've already put a feeder in.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Right, okay. Accidentally put a feeder in already, so we may take that off and put it in the other hive. Okay. Okay, so let's see what this is like up here. And we have lots and lots of bees. This is terrific. This may end up as a triple brood chamber hive. Get that out of the way. This time of year I want those bees on the frames. I don't want them in this empty space here building comb. So I would far rather have them in the bees, in the frames, where they're actually going to build comb and rear brood. So we can see that I can still see that there's a fair amount of honey in these frames, and these frames this deep soup is about half full of honey, and look at this, they're taking that stuff off last fall. And they're getting well into the brood chamber down below. So they're rearing brood up here. But the chamber below it's probably only partly occupied. Let's have a look. You see there on the tops of 5 or 6 frames here. This super is pretty much empty, so we're going to put them to work in here, utilizing this space. We'll take the opportunity to clean things out. Put this box, which is full of bees, downstairs. And we'll put this box, which is mostly empty, lots of space, still some honey in it. That's going here. Take that screw out. And now the queen's going to work her way up from being in this area to filling up this area with brood. So we've done, again, we've reversed the brood chambers so that the colony will grow more quickly and take advantage of the space they've already created. So right now we're working our way through the different colonies and looking for where colonies that, like already 2 stories, can have the brood chambers reversed, and where we have singles where we can put more space, more brood space on there. This colony here and that one we just did before, both are going to probably have room to put another brood chamber on in about a week. No more than 2 weeks they'll need another brood chamber on. So things are going nicely. Let's carry on. This hive here looks like another candidate for reversing the brood chamber. The bees have been coming in the top, some coming in the bottom. We'll see how well developed they are. Now I've used this foil cover to stop bees clustering in this space, which is one thing I like using them for, particularly in the spring. It stops the bees wasting a lot of time clustering up here. It's still mounded because I put some food in there, so they will still be building stuff up here, but it's I do like it to sort of keep them contained, as it were. It also keeps them even cozier. Okay, so I can see brood in the tops of these frames. We've got a brood nest going on here nicely. Let's see how deep down it goes. Brood nest goes into the bottom super. And because the weather forecast is nice and warm, I'm going to reverse the brood chamber here. It's not a huge cluster, it's almost a full deep super, but it's occupying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 combs, so it's mostly occupied. They're only just getting into the top of this brood chamber here, but again, this is in perfect shape to reverse the brood chambers so that the queen has more room to lay, because we've got lots of empty space here that we can let her take advantage of. They will naturally, the cluster would naturally go down into this space, but it just takes place so much faster if it's on top of the cluster rather than below it. If the heat rises, it's easier for them to keep it warm. So we'll put the more fully occupied super down below. Still heavy. And this still heavy but relatively light super on top. Take the entrance reducers off. The mouse guard. Careful not to leave the pieces of wood with nails in the way. Mouse guards off. Get the screw out of the way. It's just going to cause a hazard to rip a new piece. Just tidy this up. Insulation back on. There we have it. The cluster is now downstairs. Heat's going to move upstairs to allow the queen to make much better use of this empty space up here. And we move on. Have a look over here. Getting windier. At least it's a warm day. So whilst it's only occupying about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seams, all the other seams are entirely full of honey. So there is no more room for them to raise brood upstairs. So we will see what it's like downstairs. This cluster, if that's all the cluster is, about 5 frames, is a bit too small to reverse the brood chambers in my view. But if they're occupying downstairs as well, then I've not got a problem with it. So full of honey. But the cluster is not. The cluster really isn't big enough to occupy more space. So what I'm going to do, in fact, is we're going to put this over here and we're going to reduce the size of the hive altogether. I'm going to I might take a couple of frames of honey out of here, but the colony would be struggling to heat all this 2-story hive. So I'm going to clean this off. Put this cluster back here. So much honey in it. But all the bees are upstairs. So what I'm going to do is take a couple of frames of honey out, because we've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames of honey at least, and they don't need that much honey to get through. We're now getting into the middle of April, so we don't need that much honey in the hive. So we might put some of these resources into new colonies which will need it. Look at all this honey here. So we're going to take 2 frames of honey out. Entirely full of honey. And I'm going to go to the edge. There's all still honey here. So they're just starting to eat that up. I've got some honey here. So we've still got them in touch with lots of honey. And here's the pollen and the brood. So what I'm going to do is put 2 relatively empty frames for them to expand into this space. And I could probably pull 2 empty frames from the center of this colony, this lower brood chamber. Here's a frame of empty. Another empty frame. So these can go here, and that cluster next week, that cluster is going to expand it into this empty space here. But they're going to be a lot easier for them to keep it warm because we've taken all this surplus space out. And even though the entrance is more fully open, they're going to still be able to keep a smaller unit warmer as a double unit. These frames of honey will go back to the farm. Oh boy, let's throw it all over the place. Let's look at one more before we end the video. Let's look at this one. two-story colony. Looks like there's a lot of bees in this one. That's the impression I get. Oh yeah. I think we'll find there's a lot of bees here. Again, lots of honey upstairs. Why I felt it necessary to put this food in here, it must have felt light. Yeah, feels light, but it's probably just the way it was rocking. I can see 1, 2 frames of honey, 3, possibly 4. See what's going on downstairs. Plenty of bees down there too. So we are going to reverse the brood chamber here. We've got a lot of honey here. We've exposed a bit of drone larvae here. I'm glad to say I don't see any mites. Yeah, so it's always worth having a quick look. If you expose them, may as well look. So we know the brood chamber extends down into this area. I've got a lot more empty comb in this hive, in this box. Clear out the dead bees. All this detritus from the board. Clear that out too. Quite grip it. A wooden version. Don't have any of them. Flipping that over. Now it's clean. So most of these two-story colonies are benefiting from reversing the brood chamber, and the smaller stories are needing some extra room. Now that we're getting into a week of nice warm weather, things are moving along very quickly, so it benefits us going into the hives more frequently, because this is the time of year when the colonies grow super fast, and action we take now can prevent swarming later on. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time.